If you do any DIY projects on your model railroad or in fact anywhere else, this resistance substitution box will come in handy when determining what size resistor you're going to need for that project. So let's watch this and see how to use this and see how to assemble it, because this is a kit. You have to put it together. Hi, I'm Tom Kovichak, and this is Tom's Trains and Things. This channel was created to help other modelers who are in need of guidance in pursuing their dream of building a model railroad. You know that I do a lot of electrical work on my channel, and I came across this thing right here. It was a kit. Now, I'm going to show you how to assemble this and then how to use this for your projects. But this one is mostly about assembling this because it comes in a lot of pieces. I do have another one, if you don't like to solder, where it already comes assembled. It's a smaller version of it. It has surface mount resistors on the back of it, and you have jumpers on it, and you have 7 decades going from 1 ohm all the way up to 1 meg. This is more precise because you could put jumpers on there and get values in between what you have on here. So let's get started with it right after this. If you would like to see more videos like this about model railroading and about electrical projects, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, ding that bell, and that'll notify you whenever I have a new video coming out. So let's get started with it right now and see how I assembled this little box right here. We have a bag full of resistors here, and we're going to spread these out, and we're going to have to sort these out by value because we're going to have to solder them all on here like that. What I did on here was I took some painter's tape and rolled it over so it'll be sticky on both sides, and I went by this chart right here and put every resistor in order, so when I go to solder this side here, I'll have every resistor that I have. And what I'll do when I do it, I'll just double check it before I put it in there. This kit comes with its own solder. I had to experiment with it. I used this little board here, and I tried a couple of different tips on there to see which one would be the best one, and did some of these pads right here. And the better temperature to do this one is 750 degrees. We'll try that out at 750 degrees with this tip right here. I don't have it on right now. Now, even though they give you some free solder on here, I experimented with it and I found it a lot easier to solder with the lead-based solder. Now, if you're worried about lead-free, this is lead-free, this is lead-based. This is 650 degrees, this is 750 degrees. It's harder to solder with this, even though you have it up to 750 degrees, and it doesn't look as pretty. I decided after soldering a few resistors to quit using this, and I went back to using the 650 degree solder, the lead-based solder. And let me get my visor on so I could see this real good. Yellow, violet, red, and gold. Okay, so what I'll do is just bend this down a little bit here and bend that down there and see how close that is. Put this in here, and that was pretty close, and whenever you push it in, it'll conform to wherever you want. So what to do is just tip it over to the side like that, so it'll hold it in there. I'm taking the resistors off the tape one by one and placing them on the board, as you can see here, and then I test them just to double check and bend the things down, bend the leads down, and just try to get them in there straight, and then bend the leads over. Okay, now we're down to R4, which is, or R4, we got to do R5, that's the next in line. So I just pick it up, and R5 is 220 ohm, and I got my meter right over here, and I just check it, and as you'll see, there's a tolerance on these. So like on the 220 ohm, it shows up as 216.4 because there's on these are 5% tolerance, so you have a little leeway in there. And you don't have to, but I line them up all the same way with the gold band all to the right. You don't have to do that because there's no polarity on these, but it looks a little nicer. Okay, now you can see the back side. You have all the wires on there, and you put them, you bend them over to the side so it'll hold the resistor in place. And so you see they're all in place, nice and tight up against the board. And we could even, press down on it like this. They do make a holder for circuit boards, but I don't have one yet. We're working on the resistor board, the resistance substitution board, and I have all the resistors on the one side in place, and I'm getting ready to solder them. All I have to do now is put the flux on there and get my soldering iron heated up and start soldering. Since I do so many soldering tutorials, I'm not going to make you sit through 50 plus soldering pads on here. So just showing you a few on here now. And after doing about 6 resistors on here on both sides is when I decided to go back to the my original solder, lead-based solder, 6040 rosin core. I was not satisfied at all with the solder joints, how they looked and how hard they were just to solder them in place. Now I did the same thing for the high side as I did for the low side. I put them in order as they are on this sheet right here, so I could easily put them on the board. I'll put all of these on the board on the other side now, and we'll proceed to solder those on once I get them in place. Okay, that side is much, much better. The next part comes the switch, the selector switch from one side to the other. And what I did was I soldered the 2 outside posts which have no electrical connection. That's just to hold it into place. And so now I'm going to solder the 3 terminals on there. The holes for the switch were so large that I just have to drag the solder over top of it just to fill up the hole. Okay, now those traces are really close together on there, so you got to be real careful. Check to make sure that there's no solder in between the traces on the board. This is where I'm soldering one of the test leads onto the board. As you can see, all it takes is a little bit of solder on there for it to bond. So I'm going to have to try to get a knot all the way down as close as I can so it won't pull out both wide. Oh, there we go. I got it through. Okay, but what we have to do here is I have to bend this tab down. This is a index tab on it. Normally you would have a hole in there so this wouldn't turn, but they don't have it. They have an extra pin, and it'll stay on here like this. We'll put this here. But what we want to do is make sure that these things will center on the faceplate when we solder this in. So we're going to take this, put this faceplate on here, and just tighten it hand tight so we have them positioned in the right place on the front panel. All right, now I have to solder all these pins on here, and then on here there will be a jumper. One will go, well, they told you to cut off 1.5 inches, but that's kind of long. One jumper will go that way across this hole right here and this pin, and the other one the same way, this way, right there, and into that hole right there. So that's what we have so far. But what I'm going to do is, before I start soldering the rest of this stuff on here, I'm going to take my meter and then go down on each one of these resistors to make sure that they are correct and they have continuity through them. There's the 2 wire jumper wires that go from the switch, either end of the switch, to the wiper on each one of the rotary switches here. So what we're doing is we're taking a wire from here and bringing it over to here on both sides, and then so we could select, and then the wiper on there selects what resistance there is. Now let me clean this up a little bit on the back, and then we'll put the alligator clips on and we'll test it before we close up the box. But that's what it looks like right there. It's kind of hard to do on camera so you could see it, but we just take the little tabs and bend them over the insulation like that, just to hold them in place. Okay, let's see the wire hanging out the bottom there. We'll solder that on. Let's get the black one on here. All right, there we go. All right, trim the excess. Wait for this thing to cool down, and then we'll put the insulators on it and test it. Now here's the test. I got the my probes on the leads of the substitution box, and we'll turn this on ohms. Okay, so it comes up at 3.25, so that's 3.3 k ohms is what's on here, 3.3 k ohms. The 3.3 k ohms is this one here, the 3300 ohms. So what we're going to do is just take this right here and put it there, and we'll turn it that way. 4.7, that's going to be 10, 22, 47, 102. Okay, so this is a 5% tolerance, so 220, 330, 470, 680. See, it says 6.680 k ohm, so, and 1 k ohm, 2.2 k ohm. Okay, we'll switch it off to the other side, to the higher end. Okay, so it says 0.68 meg, so that's 680 k. So we'll get the other knob, put it on right here to the 680. Push it down. That one's just a little bit off. Okay, this should be 1 meg. Okay, 6.8k, 10k, 22k, 33k, 47k, 68k, 100k, 220k, 330k, 470k. So back to the 680. So you see, we got everyone on there. Everything looks good on there. Overall, this was a pretty simple project of soldering all the resistors on there. Now, even though there was about 20 resistors on there that you had to solder on there, after determining I didn't like this solder here, it was a breeze going back to this solder and soldering everything on there, including the rotary switches. I mean, it took me altogether Now, it took a little bit longer setting up the camera and everything like that, and setting up everything for the video, but all in all, probably a little bit over an hour to put this thing together. So that's not too bad. So I got more videos coming out. I'm going to show you how to use this for the LEDs. And there's one more type of LED that I forgot to show you about, and that's going to be coming up this month also. But watch for the demonstration on this. And also I have this one here, which is, if you don't like to solder, you could use this one, and this one has more precise. And I also have one for capacitors if you want to get into really, not really complex circuits, but more than just putting your LEDs in a building. The Arduino, we're going to do a few videos on the Arduino, so look for them in coming up this month. We'll start off real small and we'll get a little bit more complex. So we'll see.